Om. Om. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Satgurum Tam Namami Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punav Punaha Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam Vande Guru-paramparam Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayet. Jai Gurudev. Just give me a minute. 1 second. Jai Gurudev, just give me a minute before I share.
Brahmaraji, I'm sharing. Can you see it?
You're there, Vela? Okay.
Jai Gurudev. I'm sorry, my internet is not up.
No problem. Doesn't matter.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yeah, we can. I can, but it is chapter 6.
Okay, which one? Because everything was deleted. I don't know how it happened. Even the Zoom app was deleted.
Oh, don't worry. Let me see when I...
This is chapter 4. Oh.
Chapter 6 is what you need to go to.
Yeah. So it was page number...
we were on the 33rd or 34th verse.
The page number, anybody remember? I will just... because everything I
Don't
downloaded.
worry. Don't stress about it. I'm doing it. I'll do it here. Just give me 2 minutes.
Chapter 6. Chapter 6, verse number 30, right, Paramaraji?
I think it is 32 or 33, I think. It was almost towards the end.
Yeah.
34th shloka, the Bhagavan.
34th.
Yeah.
I will share. Bela, I've got it.
No, you are able to see on the screen, right? Chapter 6.
Yeah.
We are not seeing anything.
No, we're not seeing. I will, let me see. I've got the thing.
You cannot see. I'm sharing the screen. It is not there.
We can see, but we can't see chapter 6. Don't worry, Bela. I've shared the screen now. So it is 34, right? I think you'll have to open the file, Bela. You were...
we finished the 34, I think. The Chanchalam.
Is done, no?
Yeah. The Chanchalam hai Manana.
Chanchalam hi Manah Kritya.
Krishna, yeah.
Arjuna is finished asking. Now Krishna is about to answer.
Right.
Yeah, just give me. Yeah, Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Yeah. Bela, don't worry. I've got the screen. I was logged in with my mobile, so therefore it took me some time to shift to the computer. No problem. Sorry to keep you waiting, all of you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, actually, because of... I have to exit and come again, Brahmaraji.
No problem, do that. In the meantime, we'll get started here, okay?
Please.
So we read yesterday. I'll just read these 2 verses that Arjuna had Arjuna Vacha Yoyam Yogastvaya Proktaha Samyena Madhusudana Etasyaham na pashyami Chanchalam Chanchalatvat Sthithim Sthiram. Arjuna said, this yoga that you have talked about as sameness, O Krishna, I do not see its steady vision due to agitation. And then he says, Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramadhi balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. As we all know, Krishna, the mind is agitation, a strong, well-rooted tyrant. I think of it as impossible to control as the wind. So then we read about all this. Sadness is a way of thinking, implies a certain type of thinking. The mind has its roots in childhood. Stress need not be a factor of agitation. Arjuna's problem is universal. If Arjuna's mind was nothing but agitation, what about those minds given to the modern phenomenon called stress? Something happens in Iran, and having read about it in the morning paper, you are already upset before you even have your shower. Anyone living in today's world, where the input is so much, can identify with Arjuna's problem and ask the same question. The problem is very well known, as Shankara also confirms. In Arjuna's time, the question was relevant. In Shankara's time, it was relevant. And today, it is relevant. In fact, the nature of the mind being what it is, it will always be relevant. Therefore, one has to know the ways of the mind by paying attention to it and gain a certain mastery. In the next verse, Krishna answers Arjuna's question about how to manage the mind. Shri Bhagavanuvacha asamshayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha gruhyate. Shri Bhagavan, Lord Krishna, Uvacha said, Mahabahu, O mighty armed Arjuna, asamshayam, no doubt, manah, mind, durnigraham, very difficult to control, chalam, agitated, tu, but, kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Arjuna, abhyasena, by practice, cha, and, vairagyena, by objectivity, grihyate, is mastered. Shri Bhagavan said, no doubt, O mighty armed Arjuna, the agitated mind is very difficult to control. But, O son of Kunti, by practice and objectivity, it is mastered. Here, Krishna first addresses, I will read the full thing one more time. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, Mahabaho Asamshayam Manah Durnigraham Chalam tu Kaunteya Abhyasena cha Vairagyena Grihyate. So here Krishna first addresses Arjuna as O mighty arm, Mahabaho. Being a great warrior, Arjuna was of course considered to be mighty. But his might, his strength should include his mastery over his mind. One's strength may be useful for knocking the heads of others, but it is not enough to take care of one's own silly mind. Krishna confirms this here by saying, asamshayam, no doubt, indicating that there was no doubt that the mind is restless and difficult to master. Who says the mind is not restless? To recognize that the mind is restless is to have won half the battle. Suppose someone tells me that his or her mind is agitated, and I say that getting agitated is not good at all, that it does not solve anything, and therefore do not get agitated. All that will happen is that the person will become more agitated. What use is such advice? It is not as though the person wants to get agitated. Therefore, this particular advice is useless. Telling someone not to get agitated does not help at all. Whereas, if one accepts agitation as the nature of the mind, half the battle is won. Acceptance is the first step. In the program of recovery sponsored by Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is for the person to say that he or she has no power over alcohol. This has to be accepted first, otherwise there is no hope of recovery. The same thing is true with everything, not just alcohol. I have no power over anger. I have no power over this restless mind. When I accept this, then half the battle is won. Krishna accepts this one great psychological fact, that the nature of the mind is agitation. One does not try to remove the agitation. One simply accepts that it is agitation. Do not get agitated over agitation, thinking that it is something you are going to solve. Also, do not think that your mind is something peculiar, because it is not. Any mind is agitation. Agitation is the nature of the mind because the mind has to change. It is meant to change. Try to imagine a mind that has a constant thought. A constant thought means that you cannot see anything else. 10 miles ago, you saw one tree, and still the tree is right in front of you. Nothing else is there. No car, no person, nothing. You would not even survive with such a mind. The mind must necessarily change. Just as in a movie, the frame must always be changing at a certain speed for you to be able to see objects, movement, etc. Here too, the mind has to keep changing all the time so that you can see. This is why the mind is called kshanika. One particular thought is always kshanika, meaning that it does not even last for a second. Just to say the word second involves so many parts, so many frames, so many changes, all of which are kshanika. This is the nature of the vritti, the thought. Even to recognize this fact, the mind has to be kshanika. Since the nature of the mind is kshanika, naturally it is going to change. Therefore, Krishna says, there is no doubt about it, Arjuna. The mind is chala, chanchala, restless. The word chala also means agitation. And being chala, it is very difficult to control. Manah durnigraham chalam, he said. In other words, he agrees with what Arjuna has said about the mind, that it is as difficult to have mastery over the mind as over the wind. By repeating what Arjuna has said, he is saying that the nature of the mind should be accepted as such. Accept the fact that the mind is agitation, that it has its own roots, that it has its own logic, and that therefore it is never illogical. We always think the mind is illogical, but that is not correct. The mind does have its own logic. If we suddenly think of something, we think that the thought has come from nowhere. But it has not come from nowhere. It has come from somewhere. Meaning, there is some logic for it. But why? When nothing has happened outside, when everything is calm, do I suddenly have this thought? This simply means that outside situations are not required for a thought to occur. We have enough going on inside for this to happen. Why, for example, in the midst of meditation, do I suddenly think of okras? And why, when I'm talking and wanting to come up with some funny word, did this word okra come to me? There must be some logic for it. The point here is that whatever suddenly occurs in your head has its own logic. I will continue reading unless one of you wants me to stop and read once again. Because let's go in a train, and then if required, we can come back and reflect. Okay?
Ramaraji, just let me know if you need a break, okay?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, dhanyavad.
There is nothing illogical in the world. There is nothing illogical in this world. There is always some logic. Originally, of course, everything is illogical, but then afterwards, it is all logical. Within the illogical, we find there is a logic. That is, We understand that when something occurs, there is some reason for it. We must understand then that the mind is like this. This is its nature. I will read this one more time. There is nothing illogical in this world. There is always some logic. Originally, of course, everything is illogical. But then afterwards, it is all logical. I suppose originally everything is illogical. I don't know whether Swamiji means that the world is mithya and therefore it is illogical. But then afterwards, it is all logical. Within the illogical, we find there is a logic. That is, we understand that when something occurs, there is some reason for it. We must understand then that the mind is like this. This is its nature. Does this mean that I should leave the mind as it is? We could say, yes, the mind is agitation. Forget about it. Do not worry about it. The problem, however, is that when the mind is agitation, I am agitation. Therefore, we have to learn to discover the distance between the mind and I. This is the whole trick here, which is why Krishna tells Arjuna that the mind can be mastered by practice and objectivity. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. So, does this mean that I should leave the mind as it is? We could say, yes, the mind is agitation. Forget about it. Do not worry about it. The problem, however, is that when the mind is agitation, I am agitation. Therefore, we have to learn to discover the distance between the mind and I. This is the whole trick here. This is why Krishna tells Arjuna that the mind can be mastered by practice and objectivity. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. If you remember the previous verses, we learned that Atma is nitya aparoksha. It is always there. I am angry, I am is there. I am sad, I am is. I am happy, I am. That I am is there. So that we have to just disassociate that the mind, agitated mind, from that I am.
Not only agitated mind, we have to disassociate with mind with I.
Correct.
Not
Correct.
only agitated, even if it is calm also.
Here, correct. Here, because the topic is the mind and the chanchala mind.
Yeah.
Caring for the child within. By addressing Arjuna here as Kaunteya, meaning the son of Kunti, Krishna is indicating that the child was still there in Arjuna, which is where the mind has its own roots. This child has to be taken care of by the person. So sweet. Initially, he addresses him Mahabahu as the one who is so strong. Such a strong person, also the mind is agitated. So then he comes down to addressing him as a child, because the mind has its own roots in childhood. So the child has to be taken care of by the person, this child. Therefore, there is double child care. When you were a child, someone else took care of you. But now you have to take care of your inner child. The first child care is done by one's parents or certain other adults, whereas this child care must be done by the person. Everyone nurses a child inside, and that child has to be taken care of. Everyone has to do it. There is always a child who was disappointed in his or her perceptions. My mother does not like me. My father hates me. These were the child's perceptions, and because of the behavior of the people involved, they have some validity. This is why the child remains inside the person. There is always a crying child, a weeping child down below, which is why the mind suddenly takes off, especially when you reach the age of 35 years and over. This is the time that all the disappointments of the child come out one by one. And if you begin to study Vedanta, they all come out.
So beautiful.
I will read this again. I will actually read the first two paragraphs. Caring for the child within. By addressing Arjuna here as Kaunteya, meaning the son of Kunti, Krishna is indicating that the child was still there in Arjuna, which is where the mind has its own roots. This child has to be taken care of by the person. Therefore, there is double child care. When you were a child, someone else took care of you. But now you have to take care of your inner child. The first child care is done by one's parents or certain other adults. That is, this child care must be done by the person. Everyone nurses a child inside, and that child has to be taken care of. Everyone has to do it. There is always a child who was disappointed in his or her perceptions. My mother does not like me. My father hates me. These were the child's perceptions. And because of the behavior of the people involved, they have some validity. This is why the child remains inside the person. There is always a crying child, a weeping child down below, which is why the mind suddenly takes off, especially when you reach the age of 35 years and over. This is the time that all the disappointments of the child come out one by one. And if you begin to study Vedanta, they all come out. It is such a beautiful concept that the mind is likened to a child, the inner child, and that the child has its own perceptions because of the behavior of people around. And this, there is usually a crying or a weeping child or a complaining child. And this comes out. I'm wondering why it comes out at the age of 35 years and over, because I guess that is the time when a person starts reflecting maybe. Till then, he's only so involved and indulged in life. This is the time that all disappointments of the child come up. And when you're studying Vedanta, when you begin to study Vedanta, they all come out. Studying Vedanta means that you look at yourself. This is what Gurudev says. There are people who live their whole life without knowing what's happening in their mind. But when you're on this path, when you just start on the path, that little awareness of your mind starts happening. And this is the awareness that I think Swamiji is talking about, because you start looking at yourself. It's actually very painful for a person on the path because he's able to see all that is happening in his mind. Studying Vedanta means that you look at yourself. Previously, you were doing other things. Looking at yourself is the first thing that must be done here, which is when the child comes out. When else will this child be taken care of? It has to be taken care of. It has to be addressed. Otherwise, you become 75 years old and are still a child. This then is the point Krishna is making here by calling Arjuna as Kaunteya. First, he refers to Arjuna as an adult, Mahabahu, and then asks him to take care of the child by addressing him as Kaunteya. What lovely use of words. I mean, Vyasa Bhagavan is, I think, hats off to him and Krishna. Krishna then tells Arjuna how this is to be done, saying that by practice and objectivity, the mind can be mastered. Abhyasena vairagyena cha grihyate. And what is this practice, abhyasa? The practice is the practice of yoga, just discussed by Krishna, through which a certain distance is gained between your mind and yourself. This distance enables you to look at yourself positively, to see yourself exactly as you are, to see what the nature of I is. In this way, you come to understand that every thought is you, no doubt, but that you are free from thought. Seeing this particular fact more and more, seeing it inside very clearly, is what is meant by abhyasa, practice. Seeing this particular situation, thought being I, while I is not any thought, is what is called nididhyasana. And doing the same thing again and again is called abhyasa, which enables you to gain mastery over your mind. Abhyasena grihyate. I will read this again. Krishna then tells Arjuna how this is to be done, saying that by practice and objectivity, the mind can be mastered. Abhyasena vairagyena cha grihyate. And what is this practice, abhyasa? The practice is the practice of yoga, just discussed by Krishna, through which a certain distance is gained between your mind and yourself. This distance enables you to look at yourself positively, to see yourself exactly as you are, to see what the nature of I is. In this way, you come to understand that every thought is you, no doubt, but that you are free from thought. Seeing this particular fact more and more, seeing it inside very clearly, is what is meant by abhyasa, practice. Seeing this particular situation, thought being I, while I is not any thought, is what is called nididhyasana. And doing the same thing again and again is called abhyasa, which enables you to gain mastery over your mind. Abhyasena grihyate.
So here the I means is that the Atma, right?
Yeah, here the I is the Atma. See, he's given us the nature of the Atma as Satchidananda, the I that is Samadarshi, all the aspects, all the just like how the ocean is, it does not require anything to fulfill it, to make it full. So that is the aspect of I that he's talking about. So he's given us the nature of the I. No doubt every thought is because of the I. If the I is not there, if consciousness is not there, there is no thought even. So for us to thought, there is consciousness there underneath as a substratum.
Yeah,
but
thoughts.
I am not the thought. Yeah.
So that distance that you're setting up with your mind and yourself, that means is between yourself and the mind. That
basically you're like a witness consciousness. You're able to see what thoughts are coming.
What thoughts are coming in your mind, right?
That is what happens with practice of Sudarshan Kriya. Any yoga, for example, we all are into Sudarshan Kriya. When you practice that for a certain length of time, you develop this gap between your thought and action. You can see that gap coming up. You're able to distance yourself. It is not like you get a thought and you impulsively act upon it. Like even now, as I'm speaking, or as you are speaking, or as you're thinking, you are able to be aware of the thoughts in your mind, isn't it?
Right.
That is, this constant practice is called nididhyasana.
Therefore, here the importance of Gayatri mantra also comes here. You know, let good thoughts come to me. You know, so I is there, and when we practice that japa, that let good thoughts comes to me, means we are separating thought from I. You know, so when you do that nididhyasa also, that is also a nididhyasa, no?
Yeah.
Making Gayatri mantra japa. So that is a very powerful japa, wherein we are contemplating that to the higher power, that let my thoughts be good, and all thoughts which is good can come from all the direction. That is what is we do it in. So there I detach thought from the I. So everyone daily they say you do nididhyasa of Gayatri mantra morning. So the basic is thought, and which thought we have to take, which thought we are not to take. Abhyasa, that only is the big abhyasa. And you are as you think. So wonderful.
That's very nice. Can I ask you a question here?
Yeah. Go ahead, Suma.
How do you create this gap between your reactions or increase the gap between?
See, all our 5 knowledge points of the happiness course, they're there, isn't it? But
first
they don't
acceptance. See, acceptance, such a beautiful.
For a person who is just exposed to this knowledge, it might be difficult for him or her to start practicing them immediately. But with abhyasa, with practice of Sudarshan Kriya, with that practice of that yoga there, slowly that awareness dawns. It becomes stronger and stronger. Initially, maybe it's just a little flicker, but the strength
for me, I'm going the reverse, I think.
What is happening?
Can I add something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one of our Guruji's meditations, he clearly instructs, he makes us to understand first the body, the awareness of the body fully, and then the breath, and then the thoughts, and then he says ki see तीनों के अलग-अलग आयाम हैं. Body is at its own level, breath is at its own level, and this way we can clearly see the distinction between the three. He makes you completely feel that body is, sometimes when we are doing the kriya also, you can feel body is in its own rhythm, moving little bit, means shaking, you can say, or some waves are coming in the body, and then breath is in its own rhythm, and you are looking at the whole thing like completely separateness. This thing happens with practice, as Brahmaraji said. Plus the kind of meditations when we sit now for hollow and empty, that's why I was insisting that continuously when this Bhagavad Gita Tattva Bodha is going on, let's hook on to Persevere, because they have a big collection of 100 hollow and empties and 100 different meditations, in which this feeling of that complete separation of three different ayam ko kya bolte hain English mein, I don't remember that word. Gurudev says ki body is at a different ayam, breath is at different
level, I think.
Dimension. Yeah.
Dimension, yes. And this is the ultimate meditation where without any efforts you can see the three different things, and you are completely different from all these three. That is something, the amazing, the pinnacle of the whole meditation or whole our practices. So I think Brunalji was asking, or somebody.
Sumaji, you were saying it is opposite for you in what way? Can you just, if you want to express that?
Yeah, I've been practicing Sudarshan Kriya for over 21 years. And I was never reactive, but the last few months, I think I've become very reactive. So I don't know what's going on.
It's a play and interplay of so many factors, no? We are affected by our environment, the food we eat, the amount of sleep we get. So it is, don't brandish yourself. Oh, I've been practicing, but I'm still getting. That is the nature of the mind again. So I think taking care of that inner child, because see, the child, it's got its deep roots. So we don't know when what is surfacing up. And for you at your at the level of at your current situation, probably there's so much more happening. So that's why Krishna accepts the fact, and he reiterates what Arjuna says. He says, Mano durnigraham chalam. It is very difficult to control, but abhyasena tu kamteya. It is with constant practice and objectivity. And that's what even Gurudev says, no? Even in an advanced course, the last video, he says, don't worry if you become emotional or lose your, lose your temper, you get angry. Don't worry about it. Don't brandish yourself. People around might comment, oh, you're doing this for so long. You've just gone here and come. Again, you're the same. You just have to smile. No,
And he
down
says,
yourself.
he says, no, you will, when you have forwarded by 10 steps, some of us, we may go 2-3 steps back, but never 10 steps back.
Correct.
So there is always some kind of growth in us. And that Suresh ji is saying, no, Bhadram karne bhi shrunuyama devaha. Let all the good things
good
around,
thoughts.
good thoughts, good vision, good what, even listening also.
Yeah.
Everything be Bhadram.
Mano Bhadraha Kratavo, something is there. Let good thoughts, good noble thoughts come to me from all directions.
Chayana tells it, this always.
Thank you.
So we are coming now to practice of japa. It's so beautiful that Sureshji brought up Gayatri mantra here.
So good. Automatic it comes, so nice.
So seeing this particular situation, thought being I, while I is not any thought, is what is called nididhyasana. And doing the same thing again and again is called abhyasa, which enables you to gain mastery over your mind. Abhyasena grihyate. Practice of japa. So here when we talk of nididhyasana, I think all of us who are doing, we're all practicing sahaj. Apart from doing sahaj, apart from doing the shravana, manana, I suppose we'll have to spend some time just contemplating about these aspects, isn't it? Like just closing your eyes for in between intervals. Like for instance, sometime in the morning, afternoon, night, take a little gap, reflect, repose in your being, and just be with yourself, and then observe all the thoughts that are happening. And then reflect upon the words of the Shastra. The thought being I, while I is not any thought. Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi. Yeah. Practice of japa. Here
Aham Brahmasi is a thought, no?
Yeah.
But you should feel it that I am Brahma. That
Correct.
is I. That is I.
First you take the words of the Shastra first, because that is important. And then doing it, then even that thought also will dissolve. It will dissolve the self-ignorance. That is what we learned earlier in the earlier verses. But we need that pramana from the Shastra. Otherwise, on what will you reflect upon? No? Practice of japa. Here the practice abhyasa of japa can also be included. Because the mind's nature is not predictable, what your next thought will be is also not predictable. It can be anything. And since the next thought can be anything, since you cannot predict what it will be, you create a predictable situation. You can predict the unpredictability. Then only can you understand how the mind moves. In this way, you get to have a certain hold over the mind, over the thinking process itself. This is why the mental repetition of a given mantra, a meaningful name, word or sentence called japa is a must and is never given up, even by a sannyasi. I will read
Really
this.
beautiful. Really.
Here, the practice abhyasa of japa can also be included. This is included in the abhyasena. That's what Krishna is talking about. So the train of thought is this abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagena chagrihyate. So practice of abhyasa, japa can also be included. Because the mind is not predictable.
Yes, that is what. The next thought, what it will be, before next thought comes, you again do the same mantra, That is the meaning of it. Means before any other thought comes, you put the same mantra here. Repetition of that mantra. Such a beautiful thing. How nice japa. Beauty. Really very beautiful.
So it can be anything. The next thought will be what the next thought is also not predictable. It can be anything. And since the next thought can be anything, since you cannot predict what it will be, you create a predictable situation, which is the japa. Then only can you understand how the mind moves. In this way, you get to have a certain hold over the mind, over the thinking process itself. This is why the mental repetition of a given mantra, a meaningful name, word or sentence called japa is a must and is never given up, even by a sannyasi. Here I'm reminded of what Nana said. Nana, of course, inspiring us to chant the Gita every day, not just one chapter, 3 chapters at a time, and then slowly 6, and then the whole 18 chapters. So imagine if you're able to do that, you are creating a predictable thought for your mind, a predictable situation in your mind. You're only chanting that. At that, for that duration of the chant, your mind is not getting caught in its impulsivity. It's not getting unpredictable thoughts. So you're slowly kind of training the mind, training the child inside of you. And if you remember, Krishna says, and I think the Vibhuti Yoga thing, right? He says, Yajnanam japa yajñosmi. Of all the yajnas, I am japa yajna. So therefore, the importance of japa. Yeah. The usefulness of a mantra. A brahmachari has a mantra, a grihastha has a mantra, a vanaprastha has a mantra, and a sannyasi also has the mantra. There is no doubt who is without a word that is meaningful, either chosen by the person or given to that person. A particular mantra is important because it gives you a certain hold. That is why japa of some sort is common to all traditions. It gives you this particular capacity of knowing exactly what is going to happen next. It is the only situation where the mind is predictable. Even when you find yourself dwelling upon a particular object, you do not know what your next thought is going to be. And when you decided to dwell upon a given object, to inquire into it, you are not very clear about how the inquiry is going to proceed. Whereas here, repetition being what it is, you have a definite occupation. This gives you a handle over the mind so that when it moves away, you understand what is happening. And again, you bring it back to the object of meditation. Here, Atma is as though the object of meditation in order to make the mind abide in the Atma, to make the mind Atma Samstha. This abhyasa, this practice is the meditation that is in keeping with the teaching. This is so in alignment with what we do in Sahaj as well. The repetition itself is called abhyasa. Even in Sanskrit grammar, abhyasa means duplication. Because of this abhyasa, you learn the ways of the mind. You come to have some insight about it. In this particular abhyasa, even the object of distraction becomes an object of meditation, as discussed earlier. Wherever the mind goes, there I turn my attention. Yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhayaha. This turning the attention from one thing to another becomes contemplation, in which the attention moves from the object to the very basis of the object, Atma. Therefore, there is no real distraction. I will read this para again. So, do you want me to read from? A brahmachari has a mantra, a grahastha has a mantra, a vanaprastha has a mantra, and a sannyasi also has a mantra. There is no one who is without a word that is meaningful, either chosen by the person or given to that person. A particular mantra is important because it gives you a certain hold. That is why japa of some sort is common to all traditions. It gives you this particular capacity of knowing exactly what is going to happen next. It is the only situation where the mind is predictable. Even when you find yourself dwelling upon a particular object, you do not know what your next thought is going to be. And when you decided to dwell upon a given object, to inquire into it, you are not very clear about how the inquiry is going to proceed. Whereas here, repetition being what it is, you have a definite occupation. This gives you a handle over the mind so that when it moves away, you understand what is happening, and again, you bring it back to the object of meditation. For instance, when you're chanting maybe Om Namah Shivaya or even Gayatri Mantra or any other japa, the mind can for fleeting moments go away, and then you notice it and slowly bring it back again to the japa. That is why they say saying it aloud is much better in the ability for in order to have a hold on your mind than saying it internally. When you're chanting it internally in your mind, there may be two parallel things happening. The mind is chanting on one side and you are getting lost in the thoughts of the mind on another side. But whereas when you're chanting it aloud, there is only that chant. There is only that chant and the mind is in sync with that. Then there is no other thought.
And when you chant, that vibrations also help you.
Mm.
You will absorb in that vibration also. I have observed it. Therefore, I always chant loud.
Although,
so you will be absorbed in that mantra. Then you can go very easily in that. As I have observed, and this is my experience. Yes.
Here, Atma is as though the object of meditation. Why is Swamiji using as though? Because it is actually not an object of meditation. It is you, right? But it is as though the object of meditation in order to make the mind abide in the Atma. I'm just reminded of the kite analogy that we give. The kite is like the mind is like the kite and it's moving here and there. You're just bringing it back, the self, to abide in the Atma, to make the mind Atma Samstha. This abhyasa, this practice, is the meditation that is in keeping with the teaching.
Nanaji also told, no? He said, as though, he said many times.
Yeah.
Atma is as though. Very good.
The repetition itself is called abhyasa. Even in Sanskrit grammar, abhyasa means duplication. Because of this abhyasa, you learn the ways of the mind. You come to have some insight about it. In this particular abhyasa, even the object of distraction becomes an object of meditation, as discussed earlier. Wherever the mind goes, there I turn my attention. Yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhayaha. This turning the attention from one thing to another becomes contemplation, in which the attention moves from the object to the very basis of the object, Atma. Therefore, there is no real distraction. Basically, it is an inquiry into yourself. Where is this thought coming? What is this I? You go on questioning, who am I? Who am I? That small I becoming the big I. So that kind of a contemplation is what I suppose Swamiji is talking about here. Going to the cause of causes. Contemplation is appreciation of a fact. In this way, the distance between the thought and the self becomes very clear. The thought is this. The thought is not everything. Thought is imbued with the self. This becomes very clear. And if I turn my attention towards the self, it becomes contemplation. I appreciate the self as independent of the thought. The more you appreciate this fact, thought becomes purely a role. It is not taken as everything. This is the distance that we come to know, a distance that does not imply physical distance or a particular condition of the mind. It is insight, appreciation itself. And this appreciation becomes the reality. This then is the practice that Krishna says would enable one to master the mind.
Can you read it again?
I will, of course. Yes, I will read this again. Contemplate. Do you want me to read this part? Contemplation is appreciation of fact, or the one before that?
Yeah, contemplation. Yeah, that's fine.
Contemplation is appreciation of a fact. In this way, the distance between the thought and the self becomes very clear. The thought is this. Thought is not everything. Thought is imbued with the self. This becomes very clear. And if I turn my attention towards the self, it becomes contemplation. I appreciate the self as independent of the thought. The more you appreciate this fact, thought becomes purely a role. It is not taken as everything. This is the distance that we come to know, a distance that does not imply physical distance or a particular condition of the mind. It is insight, appreciation itself. And this appreciation becomes the reality. This then is the practice that Krishna says would enable one to master the mind.
He gave more abstract here, right? The way
Right.
he
Here he says there is no physical distance. It is only an appreciation.
Right.
Appreciation that I am not the wave. The wave is rising up in me, but I am not the wave. I am different from the wave. The wave comes because of the ocean. That is there. The wave happens because of the Atma. The thought comes because of Atma. But I am not the thought. I am different from that.
Right. So the self is different from the thought, but thought from that. So we have to distance.
Right. Appreciate that fact.
Yeah.
No, when you appreciate, the thought becomes, say, you appreciate the self, that will become a thought. That is what he says. Appreciate this fact. Thought becomes purely a role. It is not taken as everything. This is the distance. Means we make that thought as our Atma, appreciation of the Atma. Therefore, we always appreciate, no? So the thought itself, we predictably tell this should be the thought, that Atma is infinite, Atma is this. That appreciation, that only becomes the thought, and that we can go in. Then the distance does not imply physical distance or a particular condition of the mind. It is inside appreciation itself. Such a beautiful thing. And that appreciation becomes the reality. So beautiful. That is a step it takes.
So why the mind wanders? The second means for making the mind abide in itself mentioned here by Krishna is vairagya, objectivity. Why does the mind go here and there in the first place? The mind goes elsewhere purely due to lack of interest. The nature of the mind is to go wherever there is some kick, wherever there is something more interesting. Some interest must be there, and towards that it goes. Thus, without you telling to dwell upon anything in particular, the mind naturally goes towards the objects that it finds more interesting. The mind goes towards an object of love and towards an object of pain also, since pain means that something requires attention. These are the two places towards which the mind goes without any effort on your part. Why? Because one is interesting and the other requires attention. In an object of love, there is a certain joy, a certain pleasantness. Just give me a minute. Let me just charge my. Just come back. So the mind goes towards an object of love and towards an object of pain also, since pain means that something requires attention. These are the two places towards which the mind goes without any effort on your part. Why? Because one is interesting and the other requires attention. In an object of love, there is a certain joy, a certain pleasantness to which the mind naturally goes. And towards any object that hurts you or has hurt you, the mind also goes quite naturally. One is positive, whereas the other, being something that requires attention, is negative. Objects of pain can be taken care of by abhyasa, whereas vairagya is with reference to objects of love. Oh, this is some. Swamiji is giving us more and more deeper insights. So let me read this para and then I'll come back to reading it again. Objects of pain can be taken care of by abhyasa, whereas vairagya is with reference to objects of love. By abhyasa, a certain distance can be developed between oneself and the pain, although this may take some time. Vairagya is mentioned here separately because the source of all desires for happiness and security is what we call shobhanadhyasa. Shobhanadhyasa. Meaning that you superimpose certain attributes upon various objects in the world and then think these will bring you happiness and security. That a particular object is going to make me more secure is one such attribute. Or by achieving this or that, I'm going to be different. I'm going to become somebody. I'm going to be acceptable to myself and to others. First to others and thereby to myself. So much of psychology over here. So, do you want me to repeat the whole thing or just the last paragraph?
Yeah, the last paragraph is fine. Pretty much the same, you know.
Yeah, the previous para says the mind goes towards an object of love as well as towards an object of pain. Because both object of love because it makes you feel good and object of pain because it requires attention. One is interesting, the object of love is interesting, and the other requires attention. So without any effort, the mind goes towards these two. If you understand, it is raga and dvesha. So the mind goes towards something that it likes, that is interesting, and it also dwells on the thing that it does not want to experience, the dvesha.
Yeah.
Pain.
Isn't it? Pain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
The negative, it has negative feeling.
Negative connotation, correct.
Yeah.
Objects of pain can be taken care of by abhyasa. The abhyasa here was that creating that distance between the mind, the thought, and you. Whereas vairagya is with reference to objects of love. By abhyasa, a certain distance can be developed between oneself and the pain, although this may take some time.
So basically the dispassion to all the things that you love, right? And then the other side, abhyasa, is you practice it to, I wouldn't say ignoring the pain, but maybe you're replacing that with a pleasant thought or something positive to negate, to take out the negative feeling.
Yeah.
Means raga, that is love. You know.
Pain
That is
is
what
also
we
a
have to-
thought, isn't it? Pain is a constant thought. If you're
Yeah.
having a headache or you're having a backache, my back is paining, it's a constant thought. So there you, with the practice of abhyasa, you kind of objectify that the back as the body, and then you're looking at you're kind of creating a separation between that experience of pain and yourself. This is easier said than done. That requires a lot of, that's why he says it takes some time.
Yeah, it is not, I have that question actually. Somebody, I think it's Sheila, she's not here today, I think, and Sheila mentioned about somebody had CST therapy. I wasn't sure what that meant. Somebody had trigeminal neuralgia and took the CST therapy and got better or something. It was, I'm not sure it was through the Art of Living or some other course. Do you know what that was about, CST therapy?
Yeah, that is a form of alternative therapy. It's called craniosacral therapy. I think they, yeah.
That
They
wasn't
specific points and they do, I think it's like marma. It's akin to marma. Marma is an Ayurvedic technique. It's
technique.
where you have different nerve points on your body. Those are very gently touched, and that opens up those channels and releases the flow of blocked energy. So then you start feeling well. The feeling of well-being happens. So CST is something similar to that.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
See, this is what Ramana Maharshi and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa were able to, experience. They were having severe pain in the throat. One of them had laryngeal cancer, but then it did not affect them. So for them, that abhyasa was so complete. They created that distance between the physical pain and themselves. Whereas for us who are just on the path, who are still so in the body consciousness, anything that happens, the intensity with which we feel the pain is higher. I think this is lessening the intensity. The more and more distance you create with this abhyasa, that intensity comes down. It becomes lesser and lesser and lesser. Whereas vairagya is mentioned here separately because the source of all desires for happiness and security is what we call shobhanadhyasa, meaning that you superimpose certain attributes upon various objects in the world and then think these will bring you happiness and security. If I get an ice cream, if I eat an ice cream, I will be happy. Or if I get this house, I will be happy. If I get that, I will be happy. So we superimpose our happiness on different objects. And if I remember right, Patanjali says, vairagya is having a say or being dispassionate towards the things that you hear and see. It is only when you hear about a movie that is good that your desire to go watch the movie happens. So the desire sprouts because of things that you hear and that you see. You see something, you see a nice dress maybe when you do window shopping, and then the mind starts formulating a desire. I want to possess it. I want to own it. So, meaning that you superimpose certain attributes upon various objects in the world and then think these will bring you happiness and security. That a particular object is going to make me more secure is one such attribute. Or by achieving this or that, I'm going to be different. I'm going to become somebody. I'm going to be acceptable to myself and to others. First to others and thereby to myself. I think there's still a lot to do. Maybe we will stop here as we'll go to Vairagya tomorrow. I think we will close our eyes and just reflect upon what we learned. Jai Gurudev. I will just chant the verse one more time and then I would request everyone to share their reflections. Shri Bhagavanuvacha asamshayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha gruhyate. No doubt, Shri Bhagavan said, no doubt, O mighty armed Arjuna, The agitated mind is very difficult to control. But, O son of Kunti, by practice and objectivity, it is mastered. Yeah, I would request everyone to share their.
I like the first, no doubt, that is acceptance. He explained it so nicely, really.
That is
We
the trait
cannot-
of good teacher. No? Go ahead.
Because I just took the basic course, happiness course. So I remember that acceptance, very wonderfully. Unless we accept that mind is chanchala, we will not know how to control it. So once we understand that every mind is a chanchala, so we will find a solution, what to do. And the second line, he gives the solution. So wonderful. Really a very, very good. The acceptance point is highlighted here wonderfully. Wonderfully means wonderful. That is my take-up.
We think always it happens to us, it happens to me. Like, it's always that kind of thought comes when something happens to you. So when you're reading this, Bhagavan says that, even Arjuna, of course, he said that in the last two verses, and now Bhagavan also says the same thing. It is agitated mind is difficult to control. It's not just for one person. All the minds are like that. So knowing that, so okay, this is how it is. It's, so we have to practice and in this abhyasa and then the vairagya prakyate. Like, so you have to practice, and basically the spiritual practice, and then that's what that was, right, about the japa and accepting what the mind is and then practicing it, and what also the vairagya is dispatch to control the senses. That's what I got.
Very nice. For me, that aspect of taking care of your mind, your inner child, just like how you would take care of your child. You would not punish the child, or you would not unduly admonish the child. With love and understanding, you will take care of the child, isn't it? Similarly, this inner child, if you keep on saying, oh, I'm like this all the time, I'm always sad, I'm always losing my temper, and you're putting down yourself, there is no way you can bring yourself up. So that verse, Uddhared Atman Atmanam, again becomes very significant here. So by yourself, your mind is your friend and it's your worst enemy as well. So you befriend your mind like a little child, take care of it. The first, of course, is to accept that this is happening in my mind. And instead of questioning why is it happening, the very fact that you're accepting it is half the battle won. That is what Gurudev says in so many things. If you're having a bad habit, you want to come out of it. The very fact that you recognize that you have a bad habit is half the battle won. And then you start working towards it. And then I remembered, it just occurred to me, when we talk of japa over here, japa is the repetition of a mantra.
Yeah,
this is a mantra. It just occurred to me that when we do Sudarshan Kriya, it is actually like you are doing japa of your breath. There is a mantra, the Soham mantra is there in the back of your mind. You don't keep saying it, yes, but there is that repetition of the breathing, the pattern of the breathing that is going on and on and on. That is why it is so important that we do it with awareness. We say standard instructions, do not sleep or meditate. Be alert, every rhythm, every breath is important. And therefore also the importance of doing our long Kriya sessions, follow-up sessions. everything is so beautifully put in place by Gurudev. Otherwise, he could have just given us the Sudarshan Kriya and said, go and practice. Why did he have to bring us back weekly, every week, to repeat this again and again? To me, it seems more like a japa, the japa of the breath, japa of the prana. And of course, japa is a mantra, but here also there is a mantra, the Soham mantra. So you are creating a predictable situation for your mind, which was otherwise unpredictable. Otherwise, you don't know what thought will come up next. But with the practice of japa, you are kind of retraining that mind. You're kind of harnessing the mind and making it fall in track. It's like the river, instead of flooding the whole place, you're creating a bank for it. You flow within this direction, you flow within these two. And that is abhyasa. And that, Swamiji says, is required for those that cause pain. All the situations that cause pain, you practice abhyasa and you distance yourself from that situation. Whereas vairagya is used for those situations where there is that happiness involved, love involved. You think that getting that object, I'm going to be happy. So that is that situation where you use the aspect of vairagya. Anybody else wants to share? Please go ahead.
Here the difference between mantra and japa also is given. Mantra is only one. The repetition of mantra is japa. So wonderful.
And japa is there in all traditions, no? I was just wondering, even the Muslims, they have this rosary. Even Christians have the rosary, right? They go on.
Yeah, they do. Basically, I think when you have negative thoughts, you can replace that with good thoughts, like the mantra japa is help you. I think in one way to look at it, when you have good thoughts, your action should be good. So it's kind of bringing that good thoughts, like Surajji said, the Gayatri mantra japa or whatever mantra that we do, even saying Om, really nice, like 20 times or 21 times or whatever. And loudly when you say it clears your mind and it feels good.
How I look at it is, if you consider the normal mind that is agitated, that is unpredictable, getting all kinds of thoughts, is like a wave that is very, very haphazard. It is like moving all around and there's no pattern to it. Whereas when you are retraining the mind, for instance, you're using japa or you're contemplating, then all these haphazard vibrations or waves are slowly getting into sync with that universal vibration, universal thing. That is when you feel one with yourself. You feel complete within. So then that brings that sense of centeredness and calmness. That is like you're reposing in the self, reposing in the depths of the ocean, rather than dancing around the waves, around with the waves on the surface. The waves on the surface will continue to be there, no doubt. But you are disconnected yourself from that, and you're reposing in the self. That is what Gurudev keeps saying in the end of every guided meditation. He says, repose in your being, repose in yourself. Drop all efforts and repose.
When I studied yoga, at that time I was going through a course. We did pratyahar and dharana. This meditation, this japa doing was something akin to it. We were given a candle flame at eye level, and then we just had to keep looking at the flame without blinking. This was to go within ourselves. And also there was a yantra, a geometrical pattern given. You simply keep looking at it. And then you go deep into meditation. All this pratyahara, dharana techniques which are there. It just came up when they talked about how to stop the thoughts between two thoughts. The japa will come up. It led me to that thinking about that pratyahara and dharana that we did over there.
Yeah.
And then the thoughts just cease, you are one with the flame, candle flame. Or I don't know, the yantra just takes you to some different level. I don't know how can you just concentrate on a geometrical pattern and something just happens.
The Trataka, what you're talking about, the eye and the flame is Trataka.
Trataka, yeah.
Yeah. And geometrical patterns, I'm able to share this because I've been with the Mandala Vatika. They're nothing but different waves colliding with themselves. And sound creates vibrations. And the different sounds create different vibrations. And when they collide with each other, they interact with one another. They form beautiful patterns. I will share a video of this whole science is called science of cymatics, wherein the sound creates vibrations and these vibrations can be translated into geometrical figures. So this yantra and all of this is nothing but the various chants themselves. They form these beautiful yantras. So by looking at them or by, and that is what Gurudev says, in temple architecture, temple construction, the most important thing is the yantra. The yantra is the sacred geometry that is placed under the idol. And it is like a circuit he describes. Just like how you have an electronic circuit, this is a circuit using which, by using chants and all that, they invite the divine energies into that. The energy of, for instance, Ganesha comes in, or Muruga, or someone, any divine tattva. Every tattva is a different energy field and pattern around itself. So that is most important. It's not the idol that is kept on top of the yantra that is important. So the consecration of any temple is that the yantra is first placed, and it is the yantra that is invoked. The tattva is invoked through the yantra.
Jai Gurudev. Here I want to add that many times many people, they question our traditions of idol worship and everything. Here sometimes if other person is little bit in a listening mode, we can always explain this point. This is extremely important and very scientific, that the beneath the idol there is always the yantra, and through the pran pratishtha, the whole thing is invoked in a way that it becomes kind of a live thing. And the kind of mantras are used, they become siddha, and they give us some powers also. So it's very scientific, and if it is done in that scientific way, it has definitely a very positive effect. So if many times we face some kind of crowds who question about worshipping the idol, if we can align our thoughts in this direction, like the yantra is there below beneath it, and how we do the pran pratishtha, how we invoke certain kind of energies, and how they help us in many ways to live the life, quality of life in a better way. Jai Gurudev. even the places which are where the Jyotirlinga is there, all 12 Jyotirlingas and many famous temples, the place intersection of the magnetic and electric fields of the earth and other astronomical bodies, there is some energies in that particular spots where those deities and those yantras are kept. So it's nothing is. So all these things are very scientific, which we had followed. We are following it for thousands.
There is
of
where
years.
that Sri Chakra, Sri Chakra is saying everything. In that Navratri, we do that mandala, everything. In that Shakti will come, and that Shakti is what we are looking at. It's wonderful. It's very beautiful.
In fact, Gurudev says our whole body is like a mandala. That is why we feel good when we chant mantras or we listen to mantras, because there is that realignment happening inside, and that sacred geometry comes into alignment that with the chant of the mantras. So that is why you feel the spandana, that there's subtle vibrations within your body when you listen to these chants. And I think that's also our experience when, even as you chant Gita, be it any mantra for that matter, even singing a simple bhajan in a satsang gives you that sense of upliftment. It's because all these are aligning. And in modern research, where water has been researched, water, when you say something nice, there are beautiful crystals that form, patterns that form. Whereas when something unpleasant is said, the water crystals become distorted. So since the human body is made of 70% water, if you let good thoughts, noble thoughts come to you, it is those beautiful patterns that are within forming us. We don't see it. They're all microscopic. That is why we feel bad, we feel small when either we are hurt or we hurt others. But when we praise others, when we praise others or even praise ourselves, for that matter, you feel very uplifted. So no wonder praising is divine. And
what you told about the water, that month in Navratri Puja,
yeah,
that kalasha, in that kalasha, that energy comes, and that is sprinkled, That is the energy what we get it.
That is within, in the subtle, in the gross level, it is happening outside in the flesh. But in a subtle manner, it is also happening within your own body.
Own body, yes.
It's a subtle thing that's happening.
Nowadays, the experiment which you talked about regarding water is done with the same type of soil being taken, the same seeds put, the same amount of water put. And then they are talked to, that flower pot is talked to with a lot of praise. Another is talked to with a lot of criticism. And a third plant is left without any talking. The children are told in school to go and praise one plant. The plant that is to be criticized is given. Children are told to go and criticize it. And then they bring out the subject. You see, the plant that you criticize, what effect it has, bended knees, stunted growth, etc. This is what ragging does. We are human beings, and children should not do ragging. So that quality is brought out through this. A lot of schools have adopted this. They make the children talk to the plants. And they have shown the example of the plant growing very nicely, good height, lovely leaves, green luscious leaves like that. And the other with a stunted growth, which was criticized. And then the teacher tells the students, see, if this happened to plants, what happens when you do ragging with children? So do not do that.
Here, when we are talking about mind agitated and then all these when ups and downs are happening within, A quick method which I generally apply is just get up, put some music which you like and which has a lot of rhythm into it, or some bhajan, and then just get up and dance for 3-4 minutes. That's all. Completely the shift happens within, and you totally go into a different state of mind, and the lot of cobwebs immediately gets cleared. Please try this. It's very easy and very quick result. Jai Gurudev.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because see,
And very enjoyable also.
yeah.
This was shared by one of the course participants also, no? After meditation, in one of the days, I put some divine music. The person was sitting on a chair, I think maybe chair bound, but she went into different dance poses, he said, and she really like felt bliss. That happened with music, yes.
Movement is important because movement helps move energy. Otherwise, you're stuck, you're in a very low mood or whatever, something is bothering you, your energy is like stuck over there. So in order to get the energy moving all through, movement is important. And of course, music aids that movement, and it is very, very conducive.
Music is that one rhythmic phenomena which brings out the rhythm in each and every part of your body and mind. Like, see, the body is dancing. See, if somebody, I'm speaking right now, you're just listening, you're sitting. There is no action in the body. If a madman were to come here with a knife to attack you, you would simply run away. The mind gets paralyzed, the body is running. But music is one place where it is listening to the music. The mind is moving in a particular rhythm. The body adapts to it and you are dancing. So it becomes the body-mind complex itself becomes one. And then at that point of time, the soul, as we call it, the Atma, has no other option but to enter within that body-mind complex and become a Trimurti. That is why it is said that in all religions, dancing is there as a cultural this thing. It holds some religious significance. And probably this is why Gurudev has also said that at least once after every session, make people dance after meditation. So it is just that wonderful phenomena where all the three become one, body, mind, and soul. It's like calling God, divinity into your body at that time.
Right.
When there is sunrise and the flower blooms open, there is a dewdrop and the sun rays enter into it. It's something akin to it when you're dancing to divine music.
So if anybody else wants to share, please. Otherwise, we'll close today's session here.
Yeah, here one small thing I want to add, because all of us, we are bhakta sadhak, we do sadhana and everything, we like bhajans. But when we, sometimes our own participants, they get so much stuck into certain things, and they come to us and we really don't know. We just say, hey, do the regular sadhana, are you doing the kriya and all. Sometimes to uplift their minds, we can always suggest them, put some music which you liked in your college days. Some that kind of songs also sometimes becomes very easy to uplift the mind, and dance for that on that music for 2-3 minutes. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 dan some dan music, and the mind is shifted. This also we can suggest to our some participants who are not too much into the bhakti.
But then, correct, I agree with you, Madhuri, but then there is a danger of this. Because here what is happening is that the mind is just given another avenue to get occupied. But right. The seed of whatever has caused the disturbance, that seed is still there. So that can be removed only through breath and meditation. So I think we cannot underline and we cannot re-emphasize. We should of course re-emphasize the importance of breath and the practices. But for a temporary measure, if you're nothing else is happening, helping, they can do this as a temporary measure, but this should not
Correct,
become
correct.
a way, and it should not substitute what we're already doing.
Yeah, because what happens, in their own whirlpool of emotions and thoughts, they are so much stuck, and they sometimes we also like they itna bombarding chalta hai, to at least for just for 2-3 minutes come out of it and then let's talk. क्योंकि नहीं तो बहुत ज्यादा हम लोग को भी वो लोग खींच के ले जाते हैं kind of, because it is a genuine some issues are going on.
Right.
And sometimes this may also help if for everybody we cannot suggest just put up the bhajans and kitni baar bhi wo log kriya, they are not doing the kriya, we know that. But to bring them on the path, sometimes we really need to pull them out of their whirlpool of emotions.
That's fine. That's okay.
So
But
I also have used this, like especially when there is a lot of hot air, there have been some discrepancies, there have been some disagreements. When you do your satsang, at that time we stop it after some time, and then we start playing Antakshari. When we play Antakshari, we put them into 2 different groups, and then front and back, something like that. And when they indulge in Antakshari is when that bonding starts happening again. So sometimes these things are useful.
no doubt, I'm not denying the fact, but underlying, see, it's like that person who packs up his bags to go to Hawaii to enjoy, to have some peace of mind. He's all the time, he's all excited and everything. But then when he goes there, after spending maybe a day or so in the beautiful scenery environment, he again comes back to square one. His boss or whatever was troubling him, that stress factor comes back. So ultimately, as a temporary measure, all these are fine. But deep down, what actually is relieving? What is relieving is this abhyasa and vairagya. So that
You're absolutely right in that. You're absolutely right in that. But first, to break the ice, we need to take certain
correct.
measures like this.
Correct.
We need
Agree
to
with that. Totally agree. So shall we wind up here today? Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev. Hari Om.
Jai Gurudev.
Belaji, I want to ask